At the end, a narcissist will leave you to die and walk out on you if you're inhibiting their style or if you're hurting their image. I see all these videos on social media saying how like the narcissist didn't care for me, but like they actually did. Like I actually didn't see a whole lot of situations where they were mean to me. Like, am I missing it? Like, what's actually going on? Like, I see different aspects. Like, this person said that their narcissist always cheats, and I don't feel like mine ever cheated. Like, this person said they were always mean whenever they got sick, and I don't feel like mine got mean when I got sick. You see, a lot of times people get confused when we're talking about narcissism because they try to attribute only certain traits to the narcissist. There's 9 that make up NPD, but then there's also little traits, little quirks, a ton of different things that actually make up narcissism and what it actually looks like on a day-to-day basis. The problem is they're different flavors. There's covert, there's overt, there's malignant, there's grandiose, there's all different types that people like look at and see, and there's a million different like subcategories that are not consistent on any platform that I've seen. And the thing with it is that a lot of times people think like, oh, mine did this, so they either can't be a narcissist, or mine did this, so I'm confused. It doesn't match up. It doesn't fit the mold that I normally see. A lot of times we see people struggle with this when it comes down to the fact of like that the narcissist cares for you. Because they see different moments, they see different ideas, they see different pieces in the past of like, hey, this person actually cared. And they're like, is that actually true? Like what's actually happening with that? If you guys are new here, my name is Ben Taylor, self-aware narcissist on this platform to provide awareness, growth, healing, and change. If you don't follow on the other platforms, check out TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn. Follow us under Raw Motivations. We got the podcast, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify under Raw Motivations. Follow on all those platforms, like, share, help someone understand a little bit more about what they're going through, because you never know. If you haven't heard from the wife's perspective, check out our new podcast on Apple Podcasts, Trauma, Drama, and Life by myself, Ben Taylor, and my wife, Kayla Taylor. Would love to have you just get a slice of our lives and an idea of what's actually going through and what we've been processing over the past couple of years. If you want to talk to me one-on-one, you can go to rawmotivations.com. If you want to check out a community of like-minded people to help you grow, heal, and change, to actually have courses to help you teach, that helps teach about narcissism, helps teach about boundaries, healthy dating after abuse, how to process guilt, to actually have an accountability of like, hey, I need to come back here and I need to log, hey, I got a one more day free from a toxic person, or come in and journal the stuff that you need to remember, that you need to rely on, then look up the Narc App. And just type in narcapp.com, narcapp.com, stands for Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Community. Community of like-minded people to help you in that process. From clarity and to move forward in your growth, healing, and change. So check that out, narcapp.com. A lot of times people wonder, like, does the narcissist actually care for me? Because they seemed caring. They'll say, like, my narcissist cared. Like, they didn't treat me wrong. They were kind most of the time. They were kind the majority of the time. Like, there really wasn't a ton of stuff. There might have been, like, little things, but not, like, a lot. Like, they didn't abuse me. Like, I wasn't, like, hurt in it. It was just towards the end, and all of a sudden it changed. A lot of times people miss the small, subtle cues that are actually happening throughout the relationship because they're looking back on the relationship and they're viewing it with the fantasy, with the high of like, hey, this thing is actually better than what it actually was. I said fantasy, so now it reminded me. We just released the journal. It just came out, From Fantasy to Reality. You can actually get it on Amazon. But the goal is with this is to help actually break that fantasy. To actually ask the questions that make you think about what you're going through. It's on Amazon.com, From Fantasy to Reality by Ben Taylor. Okay, anyways, so a lot of times people think like, oh, they cared. Well, sometimes they might have looked like they cared, but the thing is you never caught them. Like, the thing is you never called them out because you never caught them in the things that they were actually doing. Because a lot of times people say like, oh, like my narcissist, they never cheated. And I love it when people say that because I'm like, really? Because there's a lot of different things that go underneath that. And sometimes people are like, well, they never physically cheated. They just were talking to a bunch of other women. Well, they never emotionally cheated. They were just, focused on everything else. Like they never, and when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, what are you defining as cheating? Because even if you just pull up, I think, a regular like dictionary definition, like it gives like a different idea than what people always think about cheating. Because normally we're like, oh, like cheating, like they're having sex with someone else. Okay. Well, what I'm talking about with cheating is not just having sex with somebody else, or not just an emotional affair, or like looking at pornography, or like whatever. It's the idea of like they're leveling up and they're putting other people, other things, other aspects of life over you. So as a result, they're stealing the time that they would, the investment they would put into you as another person, and they're giving it to someone else, to something else, and there's no aspect of the relationship actually working together. It's just a facade. The majority of time when people are like, oh, my narcissist didn't cheat, just means they haven't caught them, to be honest. A lot of times there's narcissists that cheat. Like, that's why I say almost like all the time they cheat. Okay? A lot of times people are like, they don't even have social media. Until they find it later. Until they find the second phone. Until they find the social media accounts that they never had or they never saw because they were blocked from. A lot of times narcissists they'll come across like caring because they haven't been caught, because they haven't been proved that they're accountable or that they're responsible. Like they haven't been inconvenienced to the point to actually realize, wait a second, this person's trying to hold me accountable. This person's trying to hold me responsible for the shit that I've done. And if you don't reveal the things that are actually going on, a lot of times they can slide under and seem like they actually do care. The other aspect that I think a lot of times confuses people is when narcissists care for you for the purpose of getting your validation. Now, we see this a lot more in the covert aspect, okay? And what it comes down to is it comes down to your response and how it ends up feeding their ego. Think of it this way, like the narcissist does something really amazing for you or really good for you, and then how you respond to that, how you praise them, how you put that back, they a lot of times will eat that all up of like, see, like I actually am the best person ever because of what I did, because of how I made them feel. And it's almost like getting a high off of another person's thankfulness or getting a high off another person, like what they were able to do and help that person. The thing is, it doesn't always last. And the ego from what they did will need to be fulfilled once again. And over a period of time, when you don't fulfill that high enough, when you don't fulfill that enough, then a lot of times that's when they go to other people or when they start going to other different places. Sometimes narcissists will come across like they cared, but it's just for other people's praise. Like we're talking about the covert that would abuse their wife, and then they get ready to leave the driveway, and he would get out of the car and go across the street to help the old lady with her trash can. That's what I'm talking about, is the covert aspect is sometimes so underneath the surface that they'll hurt the people that they supposedly love and care for, and they'll show other people, hey, this is love and care, so everybody else thinks, oh my gosh, they are so loving, they're so amazing, they're so cared for, but they're not doing that to the other person. So a lot of times narcissists will come across like they care for you, they just haven't been caught. Or they care for you because they want the validation, or they care just because they want other people's praise. The hard thing is, like, as going through the relationship, a lot of times you end up ignoring the signs. You ignore the small little pieces that should have been red flags, but you weren't looking at them because you thought they cared. You didn't start to notice them not showing up. You didn't start to notice them being unaccounted for disappearing, for hiding phones, for hiding different messages, for hiding different things in the relationship, for forgetting to tell stuff constantly, for catching on to different like moments of like, oh, they seem really forgetful about this because I heard about this from someone else, like ignoring all the little things. Sometimes you ignore the slights, how they criticize to humble you, to be able to tear you down, to be able to break you down, to be the level that you're supposed to be, which is subservient to the narcissist. They'll treat you with a condescending tone, treat you like a child in order to teach you, in order to teach you a lesson, to control you, to make sure that you are subservient to them. Maybe you ignored the silence, the stonewalling, the lack of communication, of them pulling back and you constantly wondering, what did I do wrong? And it wasn't until you went and you apologized for something that you didn't do or for something that you didn't cause that they let you back into their life. Maybe them ghosting. Maybe them saying, oh, I just need space. I need to work on myself and we need to separate for a period of time, and then they go out and be with other people. So a lot of times when you think of narcissists like caring, there's really three things. They cared, but they weren't caught. They cared for your validation, and they cared for others' praise. And the problem is a lot of times you either ignore the signs, you ignore the slights, or you ignore the silence. And what you need to understand is at the end, a narcissist will leave you to die and walk out on you if you're inhibiting their style, or if you're hurting their image. A narcissist will end up leaving you to die and walk out on you if you're inhibiting their style or if you're hurting their image. Because what you need to understand is it's not about the words. And sometimes it's not even about what they're showing. Because it has to be consistent. It has to be something that is demonstrated on a day-to-day basis. And the problem is, a lot of people say they cared about me because they did this, or they cared about me because they said this. But on a day-to-day basis, how did that narcissist, how did that toxic person in your life actually demonstrate? Take anything you're wondering about in the relationship, take anything you're thinking about in the relationship, and put the word demonstrate in front of it when we ask this question. And you'll start to realize and you'll start to see, as the truth becomes more and more clear, like, wait a second, I actually have not been living and viewing the truth for what it actually is. How did the toxic person in your life demonstrate care? How did they demonstrate love on a day-to-day basis? How they demonstrate respect on a day-to-day basis? How they demonstrate faithfulness? How do they demonstrate honesty? How they demonstrate how they want to be connected? How they demonstrate intention in the relationship? How did they show up and demonstrate things on a day-to-day basis to show that they were changing, growing, healing, helping, versus cutting you down, versus giving you the different sides of not showing up, the slights of criticizing you, and the silence of disappearing out of your life? How did they demonstrate care?